introduce you, and then we can take it from there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Superlative Podcast. I'm Edward Bougie. One guest, no edits, no post production, just a sharp live conversation about what it really takes to reach higher levels and what goes next. So let's get into it. Mark Barbir, hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Close.
Scale, nice. Scaled an Mark scaled an engineering organization from 100 people to 250, then walked away and started a company with fewer than that. And before we get into your story, just want to say a quick thank you for being here and sharing your insights and what you're building. Would you like to tell us about just 2 sentences or so about Earmark before we begin?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me. So Earmark is a productivity suite where the work completes itself. So what Earmark does is it listens to your meetings and in real time turns what's said into finished work, things like documents, tickets, prototypes, updates, and next steps, unlike generic AI meeting tools. So product teams can move forward with all the manual follow-up. So the most basic way to understand it is not AI notes, not summaries, actual product and engineering work.
Mm. So it's something like technical teams would be using. You're saying.
Correct. Yeah, R&D teams, especially in large-scaled SaaS enterprises that have product managers, cross-functional delivery teams,
Mm.
and then all the coordination overhead that's sort of required to have an R&D organization operate at scale.
Okay, that is pretty like intense, like making the product work in that kind of like realm. So, Mark, I want to like get a sense of like you before you started in AI. Like, what was your background? Like, you were in the Bay Area. You ended up in San Luis Obispo.
Yeah, San Luis Obispo.
Yeah, would love to know
Yes.
your backstory and like how you got into your mark.
Yeah, from the very, very beginning, so my family immigrated from Croatia in the mid '70s. We ended up in the Bay Area of all places, and when I was growing up, we're very blue collar sort of service worker family, and but all my neighbors happened to be like engineers, that worked at like Bell Labs and Livermore Lab. And when I was growing up, I would end up in the garages of like my friends, and their parents would happen to be these engineers. So we'd build PCs, and then we were computer enthusiasts. When the web became big, I got my first job in Berkeley, like an internet service provider up there, doing web development when I was like 16 years old. Then the Web 1.0 bubble took off, right? And then from
Mm-hmm.
there, I've done a bunch of 0 to 1, and then as my careers progressed, ended up becoming an executive at large companies like MindBody, for instance, where I had an R&D team of 250 people, near shore, offshore, domestic. And then I went to become the CTO at Product Plan, which was a SaaS platform for product managers. So I've been building in the product management space for some time. We sold that company in 2022, and then ever since then, it's basically been exploring modern LLMs and generative AI as it applies to product and engineering work. And that's what Earmark is, right? Is this idea of can we essentially help product and engineering teams with their delivery by basically converting their conversations into actual deliverables.
Yeah, so that's something I want to get into. So I was doing some research on your profile. So you worked at MindBody, right? You took an engineering team from 100 people to 250 people, right? And integrated six acquisitions, right? So I was wanted to get a sense like what you learned there completely dovetails into like what you're building, like working with so many people. What did that teach you about like how you could? There's a lot of like I guess waste in in kind of communication.
Yeah, it taught me a lot. It taught me that a lot of meetings are just low value activity, and that the idea of sort of that cross functional coordination layer, right? For product people, it's really interesting because they have to manage up to executives, they have to manage laterally to their peers, and then
Mm.
they have to manage down to the individual contributors that they're in charge of execution wise. And the problem is, if you have those dependencies, that's an exorbitant amount of work, right, in terms of meetings and deliverables in all directions. The other thing is that the fidelity of every deliverable is different based on audience and discipline. So what you give to a design team might be different than what you give to an engineering team, right? So the ability to resynthesize, maybe the same message in 5 different ways is also really, really challenging. And then the cross-team coordination, right? Where let's say if you have a large monthly release and a large go-to-market cadence that happens like, every 2 weeks or once a month, getting all those trains aligned, for whatever those events are, and that just the amount of energy and the amount of meetings in order to coordinate that work is exorbitant. And then the other piece that I learned was visibility in terms of portfolios or the teams themselves. Like if are the trains running on time? Are projects at risk? If you thought something was going to actually get shipped and it slipped for some reason because of an unknown set of circumstances, like how are you aware of that? How does the enterprise become aware of that? And that kicks off 5 other meetings. So there's all that, and then there's also interrupts, right? Like say if there's an incident, let's say there's some sort of escalation that comes from somewhere. Maybe it's a security remediation thing or whatever else that kicks off 20 meetings, like in addition to the incident itself. So through that experience, you kind of learn like, okay, well, we're having these conversations, but how do I shorten the cycle time from like deliverables that might take multiple weeks or days to a half-hour increment, like while I'm talking, right, or an hour increment. And then what that does is it increases cycle time for everybody else, right? Because you're not waiting for a deliverable, right? You're getting it right away.
Yeah. So I was reading this book. That's basically was talking about how, like, teams are so big that you would need pre-alignment meetings before alignment meetings and then the actual meeting itself, which is crazy, right? Like, so it means to me that like you got to brief the initial team members so you can actually have good discussions. So you need three meetings for that, and I'm sure it's now, not necessarily now, but like in the last decade or so, it was a job just to coordinate all those meetings. That's a crazy way to run a business.
Yeah, it's a classic change management problem, right? Where it takes, to your point, like a ton of communication to make sure that concepts stick. So the repetition of it, I think, is really hard, and that's something else we're really passionate about solving. Where it's like, okay, well, if I have to resynthesize and recommunicate these things 5 times, are there ways to make it much simpler, right? It's like one part, but there's also kind of the human element too, where in any change management situation, there's like this old adage of politics, right? Where it's like, you say it once, you say it again, you say it again, and you say it just one more time for good measure, right? and for any concept to stick, especially in leadership and larger the enterprise, like that's just what's required, and it's really hard for people, right? Like when you're like, I just want to deliver something. I just want to, ship some great stuff for my customer because my customer is amazing, and I'm really connected to them, and this is all about value delivery for them, right? But if it's like you want to do that, but you're navigating the political side of it, that's really challenging for product leaders.
Can I just like push back here a little bit, because like
Sure.
in the past I know there's been machine learning mechanisms. I know there's been tooling to help people write, right? And they aren't necessarily AI, right? And why didn't it happen in the past? Why were there no tools? I mean, what is so special about having agentic stuff now that solves, or what was not solved back then that you figured out with AI now? Like, what was that
Yeah.
weird thing that you could have done?
I think the biggest thing is context would just sort of fall to the ground, right?
Okay.
In a way where details just weren't picked up. Like you would have somebody maybe traditionally that would play scribe, and there'd be like one product manager or a project manager or some facilitator, or maybe a scrum master who would take notes, and make sure that everything was accounted for and all the decisions were there. And that was that one person's job, and I think the thing for just modern AI tooling is like the idea of a scribe, right, is a very antiquated one, because now if all context is there and nothing drops, through, like, gets lost in the ether, and is immediately applicable, right? Like that's kind of the great unlock for I think this next wave of tooling is the fact that like any detail at any time can be recalled. Visibility in any project, right, is just basically a prompt away in terms of knowing exactly what's happening on any delivery team. true portfolio visibility of what's happening inside an R&D shop, right, or any organization. It's just a prompt away. And I think that immediate recall of facts is really, really important and really, really powerful. The one way to think about it, maybe the simplest way to think about it, is like just if you had to answer the question like where are we today in sort of a pre-AI era, that would
Yeah.
be an executive saying like, hey, where's this initiative at? And then the VP talking to two of the product leads. Those product leads then talk to their delivery leads, right? And they don't want to throw them on the bus. And then those delivery leads talk to their individual contributors, right? And they kind of feed this information up. And then by the time that information gets back to the executive that asked that question, where are we today? It's been through 5 different filters, and it probably isn't going to be that accurate because people are sort of like, they're not, it's not they're sandbagging. It's just like sort of the natural human state of, like I want to protect my colleagues, right? I don't want to overcommit, and I want to, overpromise, I
It's
want to
varnished.
overpromise. Yes, it's varnished and it's not truth, but an LLM, if you were able to prompt, say, an organization, like where are we today? It's just this wonderfully impartial like LLM response, like, hey, the team ran some tech debt 2 weeks ago, and and now they have to remediate it, and it's going to take this many cycles to get this done, and it's like just matter of fact, and I think that like, and what's interesting is it's not even like a Big Brother phenomenon, right? It's literally like just the upside of like how awesome and powerful these tools really can be, because like if we're running an enterprise, right, like you have your instrument cluster, you're flying the plane, right? You have fuel, gas, your altimeter,
Yeah. It's like it's a car.
you need some, you just need to know like what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really powerful thing for this next generation tooling.
That's pretty interesting. Even with all like really good programs, there would be still this digging of information and pushing it up the different like work structure, and then there would be, and it sounds like what you're saying is there'd be like erosion of information as people make judgment calls on what to share.
Yeah, erosion of information, and then also I think that, and it's just a human condition. Everybody has an interest, right, in terms of self-preservation, maybe as a first instinct. So if I'm a PMO, right, like a project management office, for them it's like we want to be the facilitators in chief, right, and we have importance because we kind of keep the bureaucracy and the trains running on time, right, and I need to have more people doing this in order for these trains to run more efficiently, right? And so it's like there's like these like incentives that are kind of inverted, where it's like they want to keep themselves relevant in the way that the delivery teams want to. And because of that dynamic, the roll-ups really aren't ever going to. I mean, they're not going to be varnished. They're just kind of the outcome of humans being political, because where there are humans, there are politics, right? Like you just cannot extract these things, and it's fine, right? But again, the promise of AI is like, like you don't have to worry about any of those things. And by the way, like you don't have to go through like that heavyweight activity to get an answer. Like it doesn't matter anymore.
Like you can't. There's no like gates of people to ask. So I wanted to get into like the kind of clients that you're servicing, right? You seem to the product Earmark seems to be really good at servicing technological teams, right? Because there's lots of stakeholders, there's lots of development teams going on, working and developing at the same time. What is it about that that made you choose? You wanted to help that sector.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just it's what me and my co-founder know, and I think that like a lot of times when folks start companies, there's kind of like the most simplistic way of maybe inception of a company might be, here's a problem space, I know I can serve it, but I actually haven't lived it, but I'm gonna see what I can do in terms of customer discovery and research and TAM sizing. And even though I don't really know the space, like I will build for it because I know that there might be an outcome, right? So that's like one working method for founders. For me, I'm much more of my co-founder and I, Sandon, we're much more in the lived experience camp, where it's like if you've had a burning problem, that's sort of been the bane of your existence, or like the thing of nightmares.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you can apply technology to solving those your own problems, right, and then figuring out a way to do it at scale,
Mm,
that's the biggest part for us. Is like since we're practitioners and we
yeah,
know
in
all
the
the ins and
space.
outs. Yeah, I feel like you can kind of jump. You kind of get to the conclusions a lot faster because you know kind of like intuitively where the bets should be made.
Mm,
Versus, I think if you kind of come at it from an intellectual perspective, you're going to kind of make every mistake, like as you go through the idea maze. But
mm.
for folks that have experiences in a sector that they're servicing, they're able to sort of sort of thread the needle, I think, in a much more resourceful way.
That's interesting. You mentioned the idea maze. Like that's something I've been studying like a few months ago,
Mhm.
and how startups evolved over time by just dying in certain like dead ends. And I love what you mentioned here because I was just chatting with a VC from GTM Fund
Mhm.
yesterday, and she mentioned that really, if in the world of AI services, right, teams that can really understand the customer because they're literally integrated with that culture, right, and know the problem space so well can
Yeah.
resonate than anybody else who can vibe code a solution.
100%. Yeah. And I think for technical founders, the easy
Yeah.
thing to do is to be arm's length, from customer conversations. And I think as a technical founder, our predisposition is like, if I just make something absolutely amazing, people are just going to get it, right? And since they don't collide with customers in terms of founder-led selling or in terms of go-to-market, they actually can't refine or get the product market fit because they're not colliding enough with customers day in, day out. So this is an interesting sort of anti-pattern that sort of spins up where it's like, if you're not willing to do that,
Hmm.
you probably won't get the PMF anyway, right? And that's probably true for both modes. If you're, kind of doing the intellectual path, versus known,
Yeah.
you kind of have to stress test either way, by being in front of customers all the time.
Well, but yeah, but like, but being in the know helps you
Being
not
no helps,
have
yeah, because
helps reduce the time. Yeah.
yeah, the other thing too is like when you're talking to a customer, they know like in pretty short order whether or not you know what you're talking about. And that's
Yeah.
the other thing too, where my co-founder and I we kind of classify ourselves as older founders. you know,
Yeah.
and we're like, okay, like yeah, we're older, but at the same time, we've kind of done all the things. So
Mm.
I don't know, I feel like there's a little bit of a credibility out there, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, like one thing it struck me though is that, uh, uh, just thinking about the kind of technological customers, right?
Yeah.
I think it's an easy jump for them because to use earmark. Why? Because they already have the foundation in place to set up the context for the AI machine that you have. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong. There is it only tech teams that could that have the context files ready because they already do the meetings digitally? Like, what's a hope for the rest of the world to have this kind of functionality?
Yeah, I think what's happening is for our customers, typically we'll see, kind of give you like an anecdote.
Mm,
It always starts with like product and engineering teams, and in terms of go to market, we have to have a narrow wedge, because you have to place your bets. You can't like boil the ocean and serve every customer profile from the beginning, right?
yeah.
But once the solution is in, typically it'll start with PMs, then engineers will pick it up, then go to market teams pick it up, right? And they're trying to automate as much of their work as they possibly can. Now we have executives, like of all kinds, like using it as well. People that are in professional services, people that run customer success organizations also using it. Because what's really interesting too is that if you're in the software shop, oftentimes the requirements that come from your customer success or professional services people, they still have to be synthesized in something that like the engineering and product teams can actually use, right?
Mm,
So what Earmark does is it enables like almost like an API, because like whatever the structured artifact is of work that any team needs, like it'll create like in real time, like as you're talking. So it starts with that wedge, but it can service all, and
mm,
that's kind of the long term vision for us, right? Is not just product and engineering delivery teams, which will be our focus for a long time, but at some point, if it's us or somebody else,
yeah.
somebody will solve that problem for like all of knowledge work.
Mm, okay. Okay. That's pretty cool. So, just like wondering now, like now that you just describe it. You've been in running Earmark for a few years right
Yeah,
now,
two and a half
but
years. Yeah.
like yeah. So was there any difference between how you started the product and how it's going and how you iterated the product? Like, was there any learnings that you
Oh
started,
yeah.
but now you have?
Yeah, there's a lot. So the very first product that we did
Yeah.
was a Vision Pro solution, and so hear me out.
Okay.
So we started with this idea of making product engineering leaders more effective in their communication, because one of the failure modes we saw a lot of at enterprise scale was just product engineering folks just not being able to communicate properly or pitch things well.
Hmm.
So we actually created an AR VR immersive environment where you can model your conference room, right, or an auditorium or whatever else, and you would have your Google Slides like as a widget, right? You can sort of progress through Google Slides. You would have real time feedback in terms of whether or not you're enunciating or if you're breathing. Right? Is the pace too
Wow.
fast? Can you slow down, please? And then it would do like a post pitch analysis in terms of how well you did. And we spent months in Cupertino with like Apple Vision Pro pre-release devices, and we were like totally locked into the solution. And then, of course, the Vision Pro TAM wasn't that compelling. Like when the Vision Pro came out,
Yeah, but
uh,
not a lot of people bought this thing. Yeah,
no,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah,
and we're like Apple fanboys, so so we're like, yeah, we were fully bought in. Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
so so
I love Apple
so
too, but yeah.
yeah. So what we did was good. So what we did was we then were like, okay, well, we love this real time component. We were actually working. We've worked in real time technologies for years, right? So we're
Okay.
like, okay, well, how do we apply this to just product teams in terms of their conversations, and can we like provide like help them with aids in real time? So what if I needed a customer insight like as I'm talking, right, or context around this particular thing as I'm talking, like this idea of
Yeah.
like just in time, just in need, feedback.
Mm.
So that became the first version of our web product, and that evolved to, well, what if I could actually take it one step further and generate deliverables for you,
Mm.
right? And that's basically been set. We're through 7 major product iterations, and now we're in large enterprises and stuff. But that's the origin story, communication improvement.
That's pretty wild. So you helped. It sounded like part of my characterization. It
Sure.
sounded like you were helping tech leaders like CTOs to
Yeah.
better communicate. But then it sounded like you iterated to making the tool have the other parts of the company better understand
Yes. Yeah.
without having to change what the source is saying,
Correct.
without actually putting extra work on the tech leader, for example, to like explain what he needs to say.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is to your point around change management and having that
Hmm.
conversation 5 times. What if your technical leader, like, the burden proof will always be on leadership to cascade things really well, and have
Hmm.
the right level of detail and fidelity.
Yeah.
But if voice AI kind of takes a lot of the lift, from that inception to deliverables to from a strategy to actual application and execution.
Hmm.
That's really where the sweet spot is. It's like the idea of cycle time. Maybe traditional program management or change management might be like multi-quarter, multi-year.
Hmm.
Why? Like why? Like why
Sorry,
isn't
sorry.
cycle time?
Sorry, like you said, you mentioned change management, but like you're inferring something very different as you described it
Sure.
the third time. To me, change management just means like the technical leader changes because you're in a new project, for example, right? Is that what I'm
Oh no no
understanding?
no no. When
No?
I
Oh,
think when I think of change management, it's much more along the lines of like organizational concepts.
oh,
Where,
okay.
well, yeah, one example might be like our OKRs this quarter are these things.
Hmm.
And you have to increase ARR by 20% and monthly active users by 10% or whatever, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's what you
and, and
mean by
then
change
and then,
management.
and then you cascade it, right? And you have the big slide, and you show the delivery teams, and they're like, okay, well, now I gotta achieve those objectives, and everybody understands like what the goals are. But in order to get people to get to a place of shared understanding, that's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about. It's like the 5 times you say these things 18 million times in different ways,
yeah.
different levels of fidelity in order for concepts to stick.
You know the funny thing was I was spent just yesterday afternoon vibe
Yeah.
coding um, state changes on my app, right? Every time I
Hmm.
select something, I deselect something, I had to manually tell it what to do. And I was like,
Cool.
could you just help me do this better? And then yes, I will include, the AI said I will include a state management tool, right? And now you're
Awesome.
making me think, yeah, the change management just doesn't mean you're changing the management. It's more like
Yeah.
managing the changes in the mission, for
Yeah. The
example, or
mission.
the little parts of it.
Yeah. And then how that applies to like everyday work, and then like
Mm,
that cascade, takes time,
yeah,
but
the
again, like
bigger the team.
yeah, the bigger the team, the harder it is. It's like a an oil tanker. If I just want to
Mm,
change it, 2 degrees to the left, like that takes like 50 miles or whatever, right?
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and especially something like I can imagine a logistics company or like even the army, for example, because there's so many moving parts.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
then your audience will always have like folks that are like all totally fine with it and they're flexible, right? And you're gonna have a whole cohort of folks that just aren't flexible,
Mm,
and the ability to influence like the edges, right, is really a challenge in
yeah.
large enterprises.
Gotcha. So, yeah, like in that case, like I appreciate you like helping me with the nuance and being patient with me.
Yeah, no worries.
So, like a big thank you for that. So, yeah, like one thing I wanted to get a sense of is like you're helping a lot of teams now basically operate what you're talking about how change management, how nodes can be moved and outputs can be designed and sent throughout the organization, but at the same time the organization is getting smaller,
Mhm.
right? So um, to me, how is it just as useful in a smaller team?
Yeah, I think if the objective is, if let's say like meetings didn't exist for whatever reason ever again,
Yeah. Okay.
um, like that would be the failure mode.
There'll be
But
less, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. But let's say it's smaller, right? You still want to leverage that conversational context in a way that enables immediate applicability, like in a perfect world. So even for us, like Earmark, there's just a few of us. We still use our product every day. We have customer conversations every day.
Mm,
We're leveraging that context in all sorts of ways. In terms of like one example might be
yeah.
we'll brainstorm, and then from that conversation we'll spin up 3 different pieces of content. Just from that, like while we're
Oh,
talking, as an example,
you're talking about marketing exercise, marketing
like a,
brainstorms, for
a
example.
marketing exercise,
Okay.
right? In addition to, let's say I needed we just went through an escalation, right? And the customer's telling us these things, like based
Mm,
off of that conversation, how would we structure our codex prompts, as an example, right? But there's like, so for us, we're in conversations in all sorts of ways, even without being a large team.
gotcha. Okay, that's really interesting. The I haven't seen tools yet that really deal with in-time outputs,
Hmm.
but that's something to be witnessed with Earmark. I think you're one of the first teams that actually like can do that. Usually, when I'm working with Claude, I have to wait like 2 or 5 minutes for something decent to be spit out. you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm guessing that's part of your learnings from what you did in your previous
It's It's a huge
projects.
part of it. Huge part of it. Yeah. The other piece, related to that is the cycle time piece like we talked about. But then just like I don't know if there's like an endorphin sort of creation thing where when you see something being created as you talk,
Yeah.
and evolving as you talk, it's very sticky, like as a product, So,
Mm,
our DAU to MAU ratio is like 40%, right? Which is almost like consumer class in terms of, like territory of apps. And it's a B2B app, So that's like one. So we see that in customer behavior, and then we run like this like superhuman like PMF survey, that for a lot of qualitative and quantitative stuff, and like over half our customers would be like very 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 disappointed if it went away tomorrow.
mm.
They're very, very happy with the level of quality that it has. So there's a, I don't know, there's something about how we're delivering those insights and that experience. But that all sort of stems back to our roots, right, in real time technology.
Yeah, it's really powerful stuff. So I wanted to like check in with you the state of the product right now.
Mhm.
You're building tools that output communications and maybe briefs, for example, different tech teams. But like, it is there more to it than that at this
Mhm.
current state? And like, where are you also thinking of developing this later this year?
Yeah, so currently it'll do all the documentation pieces you referred to,
Yeah,
but we also have workflows for local agents that it's really optimized for. So one
yeah,
example might be if you're generating an engineering spec, you can like deep link one click to cursor, v0, codecs from the experience, right? So this idea of like, here's the artifact, it's like
yeah.
documenting all the things. Now I want to kick off this work stream as we're talking, right?
Mm,
So again, closing that loop. We also are the only voice AI tool that saves all artifacts and transcripts locally as markdown. And what that does is it enables it to be like every conversation you have to be immediately accessed by Claude or any local agent workflow.
mm,
So we're really big believers in being agnostic of like any local agent setup, in addition to being agnostic of any meeting platform. So the tool runs locally on your local hardware, and it doesn't have a bot that joins a call, so it can work with any meeting platform and also work face to face, which kind of serves that sort of context umbrella where I kind of need to ingest conversations no matter what the channel is,
yeah.
and get it into a working mode straight away. So that's like where we are now. But what we're working on next is much more powerful. Sort of like right now, the solution is very single player focused, right? Which is like
Interesting.
servicing the immediate product manager, engineer, and they're creating deliverables from it. But the future of a product is basically multiplayer, where you could have multiple contributors all contributing to the same initiative in the form of a project, being able to query that project, create artifacts from that, right? Like
Hmm.
insights like maybe you weren't able to attend 5 meetings because you were on PTO. Could
Yeah,
I literally like go to a project and be like what am I responsible for?
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And it just tell you, based on the conversations that happened like over the last couple of weeks.
Mm,
The other piece is there's also that is also coupled with a very powerful agentic search, where you can essentially chat with all conversational contexts, and basically form any type of artifact from all conversational context or project context, and then being able to take any one of those results and go directly to Claude as a deep link in order to kick off those workflows, right? In addition to an MCP. So
mm,
we're really fired up about another surface layer, or surface area for those types of conversations, those types of insights, being able to generate even more accurate
yeah.
deliverables. And then with MCP, that's going to enable all sorts of other things, which are really exciting.
Yeah, I'm a designer by background,
Awesome.
and what I love, I get a good appreciation about like how things are designed, right? And I hear you talk about having multiplayer participants, right? Feeding the AI and then getting outputs in real time. I'm like, that's a quite an interesting coordination engineering challenge that you have there, because each of these folks have to have like their own AI agents, and where they and their own agent setup, right? So somehow that needs to be like coordinated really, really well. I'm even struggling with that as I learn, I learn my practice.
Yeah,
But
no, it makes
that's
sense.
really cool.
Yeah, and the thing we see in the market, Edward, is there's a
Yeah.
lot of there's a lot of different levels of maturity around how people are standing up these workflows. So
Mm.
for us, like we just want to make things like just immediately actionable,
Yeah.
immediate
That's good.
value. There's so much DIY that happens out there where there's this joke of like folks spend more time setting up their open class setup and getting all their agentic flows going than actually like delivering value, right? Like because we're all tinkerers. We want to tinker. We want to be like, sort of tip of the spear.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, it turns out that like the most simple setups are the ones that are the best, right? Or maybe you just have a tool that's just extraordinarily effective. And you don't have to really think about it. We kind of want to be, in that camp where it's like we're just delivering value and straight away, and people understand it and it's automated, and yeah, you get all the benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love like the product that you're putting out there, and I might even want to like consult with you to see if it's something that we would like to use on internally too. But
Absolutely, over, yeah.
yeah, so I want to say I want to give you one last question. I want to throw it out there
Sure.
and then see where it lands. You could disagree or agree. But would love your thoughts. So you said you want people to feel less overwhelmed and more free to do the work they're actually good at. Right? No tinkering. If earmark works exactly as you intend, what does a product manager's work or week look like 5 years from now, and that it doesn't look like today?
Yeah. So what we see from the market and what people tell us constantly is that if they're in back-to-backs all day, every day, and real work is elusive, deep work is elusive,
Hmm.
what ends up happening is there's a few anti-patterns that spin up. One is product people and engineering people being so internally team focused that there's like a disproportionate amount of energy because they're talking with, you're working with your colleagues every day, and because of that, there's like this like gravity that sort of forms, and then all of a sudden a lot of product folks especially are only in internal conversations, navigating the politics, navigating the SaaS sort of scale of things or enterprise scale of things.
Hmm.
All the stakeholders are involved, and because of that, they're not actually like talking to customers, right? And that customer orientation goes away. Is one piece that happens a lot. The other piece is that without capacity, they can't be strategic. So they can't be. They're just reacting to events all the time, and because of
Mm.
that, that means that most of the things they're working on, they feel aren't fully formed. They haven't done enough discovery, they haven't validated enough, they haven't done data deep dives enough because they just don't have time, right? So that's a really common condition. And I think the other piece too is like, um, for folks, like, let's say if you automate a lot of those deliverables, right? It actually kind of
Yeah.
gets people to like where they've always wanted to be, which is like, if I'm a product leader, like I just want to do a really good job of my quarterly business review, and I want
Mm.
to pitch, and I'm gonna have the most amazing vision casting of all time. And
Yeah.
there's like lasers and fog machines and pyro, like they're like they want to be fired up, about
Yeah.
like telling what the next quarter is, or the future is of their product, and there is no time for that. That is a luxury, right? So I
Wow.
think
Because they're
the
so
whole
caught up getting information.
yeah, they're so caught up, trying to keep all the stakeholders aligned, all their ICs aligned, that it's just like it's kind of like I would argue the hardest gig in modern
Mm.
work or R&D. So it's like if we could solve it for them, create that capacity, right, for them to do their jobs really well and feel like they're being supported. That's one part. The other piece that I failed to mention is that
Yeah.
their engineers are moving 5 to 10 times faster. So imagine if you still have to kind of keep the funnel fed around customer insights, what to do next, and if the execution engine is doing all these things, what is actually helping you get ahead of that velocity?
Mm.
So that's also a big part of what we're trying to solve for is like, well, in order to stay ahead, right, of that velocity, or at least keep up,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about all these things now. So that's a huge part of it.
Okay. That's I love what hidden in all of this, right? The AI automations. What it really is it sounds like it's just a information layer that moves freely, that's structured, that captures things in real time, so that
Yeah.
people can do the work that they need to do because they're not finding it. They're not hindered by politics or internal dynamics.
Challenges.
Challenges. Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's one way to think about it. The best framing that you kind of hear these days from like the VC community and like the tech community is the idea of like a work layer. Like,
a
can you
work layer.
just create a work layer? Or another analogy I think that's really helpful or term is like a system of action versus a system of record, right? Like
Ah,
in previous lives or years, like it was all about making sure that documentation was fed into the system of record. So how do you collect it, curate it, facilitators, scribing,
it's just an
putting these things
archive.
in?
Yeah.
Yeah, these archives, but like they're only as relevant as like maybe the day that they're published, and they start to rot over time. It's
Yeah.
really hard to go back and like kind of keep those things like up to date. And it turns out that people have SharePoint instances and a lot of these like full systems of record, they don't really go back to the old artifacts because they just don't really have any value. so
Yeah.
so there's this really interesting thing with like, again, like with like voice AI, where it's like if it's just in time, just in need, and conversations are always the freshest context, then it's like the idea of a system of record seems kind of like antiquated. When you're kind of living the idea of like, I just need immediate recall and immediate artifact, today, right?
Yeah.
Because I know all the 10 customer conversations that have taken place, and 3 feature planning sessions and 3 design reviews or whatever, right? Like that artifact in that moment is actually what is accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it will always change, but it doesn't matter because I can just recall or generate a new one, 3
Yeah.
weeks from now.
Yeah, and maybe there's a change log that tells you and helps you keep it up to date if you
Correct.
need it to move forward.
Yeah, if you need to like firm down or lock down, right? And then maybe there's rules for that. But no matter what, just the way we used to work, it seems almost ludicrous. Like in I think the future of work, we're gonna kind of look back and we're gonna be like, I can't believe we did it that way for so long.
Yeah, yeah. There's going to be some massive unlocks to how we build. Having smaller teams, having faster communication, I think is just the start of it. So, Mark, I want to say a big thank you for sharing your insights. I think people should start looking at your tool in their organizations. How can they reach out to you, and how do you suggest people try out Earmark?
Yeah, so just go ahead and download it. We have a free trial on the website. It's www.tryearmark.com. You can find us on LinkedIn under Earmark AI, and also Twitter under Earmark AI. Myself, I'm Barbir on Twitter. Reach out to me anytime. We love having we just love having research conversations, customer conversations, prospect conversations, all conversations. So kind of going back to founders having to talk to people in order to get the PMF.
No, but that's how you should do it. And I'm glad that you have time to go into podcasts. It means that somehow you have lots of free time because
yeah, I have like today's fully booked. I just like
I mean no yeah. Sorry, I meant that you have time to now talk to other people, and I'm happy for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Barbir from Earmark. Thank you for having us, and thank you for being on board.
Yeah, thanks, Edward. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.